I stood in front of the massive billboard dominating the corner of 5th and Lexington, staring up at my own face. A face magnified to proportions that felt surreal, almost grotesque in its enormity. My skin flawless under professional lighting, my smile calculated to convey approachable confidence, my eyes staring down at the bustling Manhattan streets with an authority I scarcely recognized. The tagline beneath my image read, "Victrix Beauty. For women who refuse to surrender." A campaign I had fought for. Words I had written. My vision, realized in 30 feet of glossy perfection. And directly across from my mother's office window. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't need to check the caller ID to know who it was. After 36 years of living as Tabitha Westridge, I had developed a sixth sense for my mother's timing. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, savoring the small rebellion, before answering. "Hello, Mother. I see they've put it up." Eleanor Westridge's voice was crisp and controlled, betraying nothing of what she might be feeling. Rather garish, don't you think? I imagined her standing at her office window on the 23rd floor of the Westridge Media Building, gazing down at the billboard like an empress surveying a peasant revolt. "The agency calls it bold," I replied, matching her detachment. "The client loves it." The sound conveyed volumes of disapproval. "I suppose congratulations are in order. Though I must say, I never imagined my daughter would aspire to be advertising fodder." The familiar sting of her words wasn't unexpected, but it still landed with precision. I watched a businessman pass by, his gaze lifting briefly to my enormous face before returning to his phone. "It's not just my face up there, Mother. It's my campaign. My concept. My copy." "Yes, well." She paused, and I could almost hear her straightening her already impeccable posture. "I'm having lunch with the Morrisons today. I'll mention your achievement." The way she said achievement made it sound like I'd managed to tie my shoes correctly. "Don't strain yourself," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Tabitha." Her tone sharpened. "I know we've had our differences, but I've always supported your creative pursuits." Creative pursuits. As if my career in advertising was a hobby, like watercolors or macrame. "I need to go, Mother." "Client meeting." "Of course. Perhaps dinner this weekend?" "Your father misses you." "My father." The perpetual peacekeeper, forever caught between his wife's cutting precision and his daughter's simmering resentment. "I'll check my calendar." "Do." "And Tabitha? That shade of lipstick isn't doing you any favors." I ended the call and looked up at Billboard Me. The lipstick was Victrix's signature shade, Untamed Ambition, and it looked damn good, regardless of what Eleanor Westridge thought. As I turned to leave, my gaze drifted up to the Westridge Media Building, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun. 23 floors up, my mother was probably already dictating a memo, having dismissed both me and my billboard from her thoughts. I remembered her words from 15 years ago, when I announced I was majoring in advertising instead of business or law. "Tabitha, darling, creative types like you don't achieve real success. They serve those who do." My hands curled into fists as I walked away. The billboard campaign would run for 3 months. 3 months of my face staring directly into Eleanor's office window. It wasn't the success I had originally imagined for myself. But it was a start. The Victrix campaign launch party was in full swing by the time I arrived. The venue, a converted warehouse in Chelsea, pulsed with carefully curated energy. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne in crystal flutes. Ambient lighting cast everyone in a flattering glow. Models showcasing Victrix's new cosmetic line mingled with influencers, journalists, and industry executives. There she is, the woman of the hour. James Chen, my creative director, appeared at my side, pressing a glass of champagne into my hand. The billboard is causing quite the stir. #Victrix Rebellion is trending. I took a sip, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue. Excellent. Though I'm not sure Victoria is thrilled with my copy. Victoria Bell, Victrix's founder and CEO, stood across the room, holding court among a circle of admirers. At 48, she radiated the kind of confidence that came from building a cosmetics empire from scratch. Are you kidding? She's ecstatic, James insisted. The campaign is exactly what the brand needed, something edgy but authentic. You nailed it, Tabitha. I smiled, but the conversation with my mother still lingered like a bad taste. James must have noticed, because his expression softened. What's wrong? You should be celebrating. It's nothing. Just family stuff. Ah. James nodded knowingly. The indomitable Eleanor Westridge expressed her maternal pride, did she? I snorted. Something like that. Well, forget her for tonight. This is your moment. Before I could respond, Victoria Bell herself approached, resplendent in a crimson dress that matched her company's signature packaging. Tabitha, darling. She air-kissed both my cheeks. The billboard is magnificent. Bold, unapologetic, exactly what Victrix stands for. Thank you, Victoria. I'm thrilled you're pleased with it. Pleased? I'm over the moon. The early social media metrics are off the charts. She squeezed my arm. And having your face as the centerpiece was inspired. You embody the Victrix woman, intelligent, ambitious, refusing to be constrained by others' expectations. The irony wasn't lost on me. If only Victoria knew about the constrained expectations I'd grown up with. Speaking of which, Victoria continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially, I understand the billboard has a rather strategic placement? Across from Westridge Media? I kept my expression neutral. Pure coincidence. She laughed, a rich sound that turned heads. Of course. Just like it's a coincidence that Eleanor Westridge is one of the most powerful women in publishing, and her daughter is the face of a campaign about women refusing to surrender. I'm just doing my job, I replied carefully. Victoria's eyes sparkled with amusement. Well, your job has caught the attention of the Adweek editorial team. They want to feature the campaign, and you, in next month's issue. My heart skipped a beat. Adweek was the industry Bible. A feature could catapult my career to new heights. That's incredible. It is. Victoria nodded. They specifically mentioned how refreshing it is to see an agency put a real creative, not just a model, as the face of a campaign. It adds authenticity. As Victoria moved on to greet other guests, James raised his glass in a toast. To authenticity, he said with a wink. I clinked my glass against his, forcing a smile. The truth was, there was nothing authentic about my presence on that billboard. It had been a last-minute decision when our original model dropped out due to a scheduling conflict. I'd only agreed to step in because we were desperate, and because, yes, the thought of my face staring directly into my mother's office had been too deliciously satisfying to resist. My phone buzzed with a text message. I expected it to be from my mother, but instead, it was from my father. Saw the billboard. Very impressive, Tabby Cat. Your mother mentioned it at dinner. Proud of you. I stared at the message, a complicated knot of emotions tightening in my chest. My father had always been my champion, in his quiet way. But his support always came with an undercurrent of apology for my mother's criticism. The phone buzzed again before I could respond. She's proud too, in her way. You know how she is. Yes, I thought bitterly. I know exactly how she is. I pocketed the phone without responding and downed the rest of my champagne in one swift gulp. Another? James asked, eyebrow raised. Definitely, I replied. And then introduce me to that Adweek editor. If I'm going to be authentic, I might as well go all in. 3 hours and too many champagne flutes later, I stumbled out of the party and into a waiting Uber. The evening had been a success by any measure. The Adweek editor had been enthusiastic about featuring the campaign. Victoria had hinted at expanding my role for future Victrix projects. Several potential clients had approached me about freelance work. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. As the car navigated through late-night Manhattan traffic, I leaned my head against the cool window and closed my eyes. The driver, sensing my mood, mercifully remained silent. My phone buzzed again, a text from my younger sister, Penelope. Mom is having an absolute conniption about your billboard. It's glorious. Call me tomorrow with all the details. I smiled despite myself. Penny had always been my co-conspirator in the ongoing Cold War with our mother. Unlike me, however, she had chosen a path that Eleanor approved of, law school, followed by a prestigious clerkship, and now a rising position at a top firm. It gave her a certain immunity that I'd never enjoyed. The Uber pulled up to my apartment building in the East Village. I tipped the driver generously and made my way up to my third-floor walk-up. The contrast between my living situation and the glossy image on the billboard wasn't lost on me. Billboard Tabitha projected success and confidence. Real Tabitha lived in a cramped one-bedroom with inconsistent water pressure and a neighbor who practiced saxophone at ungodly hours. I kicked off my heels the moment I stepped inside, feeling the tension in my feet release. The apartment was small but entirely mine, a space untouched by Eleanor's influence. No antiques passed down through generations of Westridges. No tasteful artwork selected by my mother's decorator. Just my mismatched furniture, my collection of vintage movie posters, and my sprawling bookshelf crammed with everything from classic literature to pulpy crime novels Eleanor would deem pedestrian. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere across town, my billboard loomed large in the darkness, illuminated by strategically placed spotlights. Tomorrow morning, my mother would see it again from her office window. The thought both thrilled and exhausted me. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The screen displayed Eleanor Westridge along with a photo of my mother from my parents' anniversary party last year. She looked immaculate as always, not a silver hair out of place, her smile poised but distant. I hesitated, then answered. It's late, Mother. I'm well aware of the time, Tabitha. Her voice was tight. I've just received a call from Catherine Morrison. Catherine Morrison, editor-in-chief of Vogue and one of my mother's oldest friends. My stomach tightened. Oh? She saw your advertisement. Apparently, her daughter is quite taken with this Victrix brand. She wanted to know if I could arrange a meeting between you and Alexis. Alexis Morrison was an up-and-coming fashion photographer whose work I'd admired for years. A connection with her could open doors I hadn't even dared to knock on. That would be helpful, I admitted cautiously. Yes, I thought it might be. Eleanor paused. I've arranged lunch for the 3 of us this Saturday at Lou Bernardine. 1 o'clock. Thank you. Another pause. The campaign is certainly eye-catching, Tabitha. Though I question the wisdom of making yourself the center of attention. And there it was, the inevitable criticism wrapped in a superficial compliment. It wasn't the original plan, I said, suddenly tired. The model we hired had a scheduling conflict. I see. Her tone suggested she didn't believe me. Well, it certainly garnered attention. I suppose that's the point of advertising, isn't it? To be noticed, regardless of how. I gripped the phone tighter. It's more than just being noticed, Mother. It's about conveying a message. Creating a connection with the audience. Telling a story that resonates. Yes, well. Eleanor sighed. I've always found it amusing how advertisers dress up what is essentially manipulation as something noble. Is that what you think I do? Manipulate people? Everyone manipulates, Tabitha. Some are just more honest about it than others. She cleared her throat. In any case, I'll see you Saturday. Do try to arrive on time. You know how Catherine values punctuality. The call ended before I could respond. I stared at the dark screen, fighting the familiar mixture of rage and inadequacy that conversations with my mother always evoked. I remembered a childhood moment with sudden, vivid clarity. I was 10, proudly showing Eleanor a story I'd written for school. She'd skimmed it with a distracted air, then handed it back with a pat on my head. It's very creative, darling, she'd said. But perhaps focus more on your mathematics. Creative types don't achieve real success in this world. They simply don't have the discipline. 26 years later, and I was still trying to prove her wrong. I crawled into bed without removing my makeup, a rebellion against the rigorous skincare routine Eleanor had instilled in me since adolescence. As I drifted into an alcohol-tinged sleep, I imagined Billboard me watching over the city, her lipsticked smile a declaration of war. Saturday arrived with merciless brightness, the summer sun streaming through my blinds and intensifying my lingering hangover. I'd spent the days following the launch party responding to media inquiries, attending follow-up meetings, and avoiding my mother's calls. Now, as I stood outside Lou Bernardine in a dress that cost more than my monthly rent, an emergency purchase that morning, knowing Eleanor would scrutinize my outfit, I felt like an imposter. The hostess greeted me with practiced warmth and led me to a corner table where Eleanor and Catherine Morrison were already seated, deep in conversation. Tabitha, darling, Eleanor said, her voice carrying just enough to turn heads at nearby tables. You're almost on time. How refreshing. Catherine Morrison rose to greet me, elegant in a simple black sheath dress that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Tabitha, what a pleasure. Your campaign for Victrix is causing quite the stir. Thank you, I said, taking the empty seat. I'm glad it's resonating with people. Resonating is an understatement, Catherine smiled. Alexis is quite impressed. She's interested in collaborating with you on a project. Eleanor signaled for the waiter. Let's order first, shall we? The Dover sole is excellent here. The next hour passed in a blur of carefully navigated conversation. Catherine asked thoughtful questions about the campaign concept, seeming genuinely interested in my creative process. Eleanor managed to insert subtle criticisms disguised as motherly pride, each one a tiny needle under my skin. Tabitha has always had an artistic temperament, she told Catherine. Even as a child, she preferred fantasy to practicality. A valuable trait in the creative industries, Catherine observed. Perhaps, Eleanor conceded with a tight smile. Though I always hoped she'd channel that creativity into something more substantial. Like law, like Penelope? I couldn't help asking, my tone sharper than intended. Catherine's eyebrow rose slightly, sensing the tension. Penelope has always been more pragmatic, Eleanor replied smoothly. You take after your father's side of the family. All emotion and impulse. I took a large sip of wine, wishing it were something stronger. Speaking of impulse, Catherine interjected, clearly trying to defuse the situation. Alexis is quite impulsive herself. It's what makes her work so dynamic. She's putting together a series of portraits of women in creative fields, and she'd love to include you. Me? I nearly choked on my wine. I'm behind the scenes. Not the talent. But you are the talent, Catherine insisted. That billboard proves it. You've put yourself out there as the embodiment of the modern creative woman. It's bold, authentic. There was that word again, authentic. If only they knew how accidental my role as the face of Victrix had been. Tabitha has always been comfortable in the spotlight, Eleanor remarked, dabbing her lips with her napkin. Even as a child, she had a flair for the dramatic. Catherine laughed. A trait that serves her well in advertising, I'd imagine. When properly channeled, perhaps. Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though I always worry about overexposure. There's a fine line between visibility and vulnerability. The warning was clear, wrapped in maternal concern. Don't reveal too much. Don't risk the Westridge reputation. I think I'll take that risk, I said, meeting my mother's gaze directly. Please tell Alexis I'd be honored to be part of her project, Catherine. Wonderful. Catherine clapped her hands together. She'll be thrilled. In fact, why don't you come to our summer house in the Hamptons next weekend? Alexis will be there, along with some other creatives she's featuring. It could be the perfect setting for the shoot. Eleanor's smile remained fixed, but I could see the calculations running behind her eyes. The Morrisons' Hamptons estate was legendary, and an invitation was a significant social coup. That sounds lovely, I said before Eleanor could interject. I'd be delighted to come. Perfect. I'll have my assistant send you the details. Catherine turned to Eleanor. You must be so proud of Tabitha, Eleanor. She's making quite a name for herself. Indeed, Eleanor replied, her tone measured. Though I always remind her that true success is measured by longevity, not momentary attention. The lunch continued with similar undercurrents of tension beneath polite conversation. By the time we parted ways outside the restaurant, my jaw ached from maintaining my smile. Catherine certainly seems taken with your billboard, Eleanor said as we waited for our respective cars. Though I hope you realize what you're getting into with this portrait series. I'm getting into an opportunity, Mother. One that could significantly advance my career. And potentially expose you to scrutiny you're not prepared for. She adjusted her designer sunglasses. Creative industries are fickle, Tabitha. Today's sensation is tomorrow's cautionary tale. Is that what you're worried about? That I'll embarrass you? I'm worried that you're rushing toward validation without considering the consequences. Her car pulled up to the curb. Just be careful what you reveal to Alexis Morrison. That girl has a talent for exposing vulnerabilities in her subjects. As Eleanor slid into the back seat of her town car, I fought the urge to shout after her. To demand she acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, I knew what I was doing. That perhaps I had talents she'd never bothered to recognize. Instead, I watched her car pull away, then began walking, needing to clear my head before returning to my apartment. My phone buzzed with a text from Penny, "How was lunch with the dragon lady?" I typed back, the usual psychological warfare. but I scored an invitation to the Morrisons' Hamptons estate. Penny's response was immediate. What? That's major, Tabs. Mom must be fuming beneath that glacial exterior. I smiled, picturing Eleanor's carefully controlled expression hiding her true feelings. As I walked, I passed a magazine stand where the latest issue of Adweek was displayed. The cover featured a striking image from a competitor's campaign. Next month, it could be the Victrix campaign. It could be me. I thought of Eleanor's words about creative types not achieving real success. About advertisers being manipulators. About me being all emotion and impulse. My phone buzzed again. Don't let her get to you, Tabs. This is your moment. Seize it. Penny always did know how to read my mind. I texted back, planning to. Just need to figure out how not to look like an imposter when I get there. Her reply made me laugh out loud, just wear that red lipstick from the Billboard. It gives you superpowers. I tucked my phone away and continued walking, my step lighter. Maybe Penny was right. Maybe all I needed was the right shade of lipstick and the courage to wear it. Untamed ambition had gotten me this far, after all. The Morrisons' Hamptons estate was everything the society pages had described and more, a sprawling waterfront property with manicured gardens, a tennis court, and a pool that seemed to merge seamlessly with the ocean beyond. I arrived on Friday afternoon, having taken a rare day off from the agency. Catherine greeted me warmly on the veranda, looking effortlessly elegant in linen pants and a silk blouse. Tabitha, welcome. How was your drive? Smooth, thank you, I replied, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. Your home is stunning. It's a bit much, isn't it? Catherine laughed, guiding me inside. But it's been in Christopher's family for generations, and I've come to love its excesses. Let me show you to your room, and then you can join us by the pool. Alexis is eager to meet you. The guest room was larger than my entire apartment, with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. I changed into a swimming costume, covered it with a light sundress, and headed downstairs, feeling like an actress stepping into a role. By the pool, a small group had gathered. Catherine made introductions, a fashion designer whose work I'd admired for years, a prominent gallerist, a Broadway choreographer. And Alexis Morrison. Alexis was striking rather than conventionally beautiful, with sharp features and intense dark eyes that seemed to dissect everything they landed on. She studied me with undisguised interest as we shook hands. The Victrix woman herself, she said, her voice lower than I'd expected. That billboard is masterful, the composition, the lighting, but especially the expression. You managed to convey defiance without aggression. It's compelling. Thank you, I said, genuinely flattered. The concept was that women can be powerful without sacrificing their femininity. Or that femininity itself can be a form of power? Alexis suggested. Exactly. She nodded, seemingly satisfied. I want to shoot you tomorrow morning. The light is perfect on the east terrace around 7. Is that too early? Not at all. Good. We'll talk more about the concept over dinner. She glanced at her watch. I have a call with my gallery in 20 minutes. Excuse me. As Alexis walked away, Catherine appeared at my side with a glass of champagne. She likes you, she said, handing me the flute. That's quite a compliment, coming from Alexis. She's notoriously selective about her subjects. I'm flattered, I replied honestly. Her work is incredible. It is. Catherine nodded. And often controversial. Her portraits have a way of revealing things about her subjects that they might not have intended to share. I thought of Eleanor's warning and felt a flicker of unease. What do you mean? Catherine waved a hand dismissively. Oh, nothing sinister. Alexis just has a gift for capturing truth. She sees beyond the facade people present to the world. And that's what she wants to do with this portrait series? Capture truth? In a sense. Catherine's smile was enigmatic. She's calling it inherited ambitions, exploring how women in creative fields are shaped by their relationships with success. Particularly those with complicated family legacies. My unease deepened. I'm not sure I qualify. My family legacy is in publishing, not advertising. Oh, but that's precisely what makes you interesting, Tabitha. Catherine's gaze was suddenly piercing. A Westridge choosing a path outside the family empire? That's a statement in itself. Before I could respond, Catherine was called away by another guest, leaving me to wonder exactly what I'd gotten myself into. Dinner that evening was a lavish affair, served on the terrace overlooking the water. The conversation flowed as freely as the wine, touching on art, politics, and industry gossip. I found myself relaxing, even enjoying the company of these accomplished strangers who treated me as a peer rather than Eleanor Westridge's wayward daughter. As dessert was served, Alexis turned to me. Tell me, Tabitha. What made you choose advertising over publishing? It seems the obvious path would have been to join the family business. The table quieted, all eyes turning to me. I took a sip of wine, buying time. I suppose I wanted to create rather than curate, I said carefully. Publishing is about selecting and refining other people's voices. Advertising is about finding my own. And did your mother support that decision? Alexis pressed. The question was pointed, almost invasive. I felt the weight of expectation around the table. My mother, I began, then paused. My mother has very definite ideas about success. Eleanor Westridge is legendary in publishing circles, the gallerist remarked. I've heard she's ruthlessly efficient. Ruthless being the operative word, I said, attempting levity. The table laughed, but Alexis didn't join in. Her eyes remained fixed on me, analyzing. Does it bother you? She asked. Living in her shadow? Alexis, Catherine admonished gently. Not everyone wants to air their family dynamics over tiramisu. It's fine, I assured her, though it wasn't. I don't think of it as living in her shadow. I think of it as creating my own light. Alexis nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. That's what interests me about you, Tabitha. That determination to define yourself separately from your family name, while still carrying its weight. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Alexis's questions lingered in my mind. As we moved to the drawing room for after-dinner drinks, she approached me again. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable earlier, she said, though her tone suggested she didn't particularly care if she had. I like to understand my subjects before I photograph them. Isn't the point of a portrait to capture what you see, not what you think you know? I challenged. She laughed, genuinely amused. In theory, perhaps. But the camera doesn't capture reality, it captures a version of it. The more I understand about a subject, the more truthful that version can be. And what truth are you hoping to capture about me? Alexis studied me intently. That's what I'm still figuring out. There's something compelling about a woman who puts her face on a billboard directly across from her mother's office. Something provocative. My stomach dropped. How did you know about that? Research is part of my process. She sipped her drink. Don't worry, I find it delicious. A visual challenge to maternal authority. Especially from a Westridge. It wasn't intentional, I lied. The placement was coincidental. Alexis's skeptical expression made it clear she didn't believe me. If you say so. But intentional or not, it makes for a fascinating narrative. The daughter's face looming large outside the mother's window. It's almost Freudian. I excused myself shortly after, claiming fatigue from the drive. In my room, I paced back and forth, my mind racing. Alexis clearly had an agenda for this portrait series, one that involved excavating family dynamics I'd spent years trying to compartmentalize. My phone buzzed with a text from Penny, "How's the hobnobbing going?" I replied, "Alexis Morrison knows about the Billboard placement and seems to think it's a deliberate statement against Mother, Penny, isn't it?" I stared at her response. Was it? Had I subconsciously engineered this entire situation? After a moment, I typed, "Maybe. But I don't want that to be the focus of her portrait." Penny didn't respond immediately. When she did, her message was uncharacteristically serious. "Be careful, Tabs. Alexis Morrison has a reputation for exposing familial tensions in her work. Remember that photographic essay she did on the Rothman sisters?" I did remember. It had been a brutal visual dissection of the rivalry between two prominent socialites, revealing insecurities and resentments neither had publicly acknowledged. I looked out at the ocean, darkened under the night sky. I could back out, claim a work emergency and leave first thing in the morning. But running away felt too much like admitting defeat. Like proving Eleanor right about creative types lacking discipline and fortitude. No, I decided. I would stay. I would sit for Alexis's portrait. But I would control the narrative. I just had to figure out what story I wanted to tell. The eastern terrace was bathed in golden light when I arrived at 6:45 the next morning. Alexis was already there, arranging her equipment with methodical precision. She wore black from head to toe, her dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. Right on time, she nodded approvingly. "I've set up a chair here, with the ocean as backdrop." "It's beautiful," I said, taking in the view. "It is," she agreed. "But I want to focus on you, not the scenery. I'm thinking of a tighter composition. Just your face, perhaps your shoulders." Like the billboard, I thought but didn't say. "I brought several outfit options," I offered. "Wear what makes you feel powerful," Alexis instructed, adjusting her camera settings. This series is about women who refuse to be defined by others' expectations. I want to capture that defiance. I chose a simple white shirt, rolled at the sleeves, paired with minimal jewelry. My makeup was understated except for a bold swipe of Victrix's Untamed Ambition lipstick. Billboard me, but more intimate. More real. Alexis studied me as I sat in the chair she'd positioned. Good. The simplicity works. Now, look directly into the camera. I want to see the woman behind the advertisement. I complied, meeting her lens with what I hoped was confidence rather than defiance. "Tell me about the first time you realized you didn't want to follow in your mother's footsteps," Alexis said as she began shooting. The question caught me off guard. I'm not sure there was a specific moment. "There's always a moment," she insisted, moving around me to capture different angles. "A catalyst. Something that crystallizes the decision." I thought back, trying to identify such a moment. I suppose it was during a summer internship at Westridge Media. I was 16. My mother had arranged for me to work in the marketing department, thinking it would spark an interest in the family business. And did it? not in the way she hoped. I smiled at the memory. I was fascinated by the advertisements in the magazines, not the editorial content. The way they told an entire story in a single image or a few carefully chosen words. It felt like magic. Alexis nodded, encouraging me to continue as she kept shooting. When I told my mother I was more interested in creating ads than publishing them, she wasn't pleased. She said. I hesitated, unwilling to reveal too much. Said what? Alexis pressed. I sighed. She said creative types like me don't achieve real success. That we serve those who do. Alexis lowered her camera for a moment, her expression unreadable. And that hurt you? It wasn't a question. It did. And now? With your face on a billboard outside her office window? How does that feel? Complicated, I admitted. Because part of you did it to prove her wrong, but another part still seeks her approval, Alexis suggested, resuming her shooting. I stiffened. I don't need her approval. Don't you? Alexis's tone was matter-of-fact, not challenging. Most children do, no matter how old they get. No matter how successful they become. I've made peace with the fact that I'll never have it, I said, trying to keep my expression neutral. At least not in the way I once wanted it. And what way was that? I hesitated, wary of revealing too much. Unconditional, I suppose. Free from comparison or qualification. Alexis nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Turn slightly to your left, she instructed. Chin up. Yes, like that. For the next hour, she continued shooting while asking probing questions about my childhood, my relationship with Eleanor, my career path. I answered cautiously, aware that each response could potentially shape how she portrayed me in her series. I think we've got what we need, she finally announced, lowering her camera. You're a compelling subject, Tabitha. There's a tension in you, between confidence and uncertainty, between defiance and yearning. It's fascinating to capture. I wasn't sure if this was a compliment or an indictment. When will the portraits be ready? I'll do a first edit this week. Alexis began packing up her equipment. The exhibition opens at the Thorpe Gallery in September. Catherine will make sure you receive an invitation to the opening. September, I repeated. That's just a few weeks after my Billboard campaign ends. Alexis smiled, a knowing curve of her lips. Perfect timing, wouldn't you say? Your mother will barely have time to adjust to one visual of you before encountering another. The way she said it, as if she'd read my innermost thoughts, sent a chill through me. This portrait series isn't about my mother, I said firmly. Of course not, Alexis agreed, but her tone suggested otherwise. It's about you. But we are all, to some extent, defined by our relationships, especially those with our parents. You can't separate your drive to succeed from your mother's dismissal of your potential. They're intrinsically linked. I wanted to argue, to insist that my career choices and achievements were mine alone, untainted by Eleanor's influence or my reaction to it. But the words wouldn't come, because deep down, I knew Alexis was right. Billboard me might have been staring down at the city with confidence, but real me felt increasingly unmoored as I drove back to Manhattan after the Hamptons weekend. The portrait session with Alexis had stripped away layers I'd carefully constructed, exposing vulnerabilities I preferred to keep hidden. When my phone rang with Eleanor's distinctive tone, I nearly let it go to voicemail. Instead, I connected it to the car's Bluetooth. Catherine tells me the portrait session went well, she said without preamble. It was intense, I admitted, watching the highway signs flash past. Alexis Morrison has a reputation for intensity, Eleanor replied. And for exploiting family tensions for artistic effect. A weary sigh escaped me. Is that what you think I'm doing with the Billboard? Exploiting our tensions? The silence stretched between us. When Eleanor finally spoke, her voice carried a note I'd rarely heard, uncertainty. I think you're proving me wrong, Tabitha. And perhaps that's something I should reflect upon. The words hit me with unexpected force. As I approached the city skyline, my enormous face appeared in the distance, watching over Manhattan with serene authority. But it wasn't Eleanor's office window I found myself thinking about as I navigated through traffic. It was the portrait Alexis would create, one that would reveal not just my defiance of maternal expectations, but the complicated love that had shaped that defiance. A portrait that might finally show what the Billboard couldn't, that success wasn't about proving someone wrong, but about discovering what was authentically right for me. And maybe, just maybe, Eleanor was beginning to see that too. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone displayed a text from Alexis. First edit completed. You're more like your mother than you realize, both uncompromising in pursuit of your vision. That's not criticism. It's recognition. I set the phone down and stood by my window, looking out at the city where both versions of me now existed, the glossy public image and the raw, vulnerable portrait to come. Two truths equally valid. Two ways of finally being seen.